Party bangers in the building. Kritigri's month in gaming. It's time for another roundup of the games I've played this month. Or if you're listening to the swanky new audio version of this blog post, it's your very first. Welcome! Here's everything I played in June. Diablo 4. The problem with the game coming out a month ago is that we've put an entire month between the meat of the game and now. If you'd asked me 3 weeks ago, I'd happily gush for hours about Diablo 4. The story is fantastic, the combat is phenomenal, the atmosphere is much darker than its predecessor, and above everything else I'm going to say here, I still want to play it. For hours and hours and hours. Unfortunately, having played the living hell out of it already, much of what we're left with impressions-wise are the gripes. For instance, man, does somebody need to have a conversation at Blizzard about level scaling. Leveling up sucked in Dragonflight, and it sucked in Diablo 4. For the first 50 levels, you get less powerful with every ding, to the point where the game becomes a slog. And that's even with item upgrades and synergized builds. And from about level 45 onwards, the time between levels becomes glacial. As of the time of writing this, they've just put out a patch significantly increasing XP rewards from endgame activities. We're talking triple rewards, and it still doesn't feel fast. It feels normal. But take everything I'm saying with a pinch of salt, because this is an otherwise fantastic game that I'm over the moon with. Most of my complaints take it down from a 10 out of 10 to a 9 out of 10 if we're doing scores, and all of my gripes are fixable. Just please recognise that I'm all gushed out on this one, okay? Game's good, go play it. I can muster nothing more to say about it. The Elder Scrolls Online Necrom. Over the last few years, I've struggled with my feelings on the main chapter stories of ESO. Despite liking Greymoor, it wasn't capturing me quite like Morrowind or Elsewhere had. And then came Blackwood, which regurgitated the plotline of a vanilla game's main story seemingly without realising. And High Isle didn't do much for me, though I respected the attempt for a more original and grounded story. So, although the Necrom announcement left me feeling optimistic, I was also trepidatious. I loved all things Morrowind and all things Hermaeus Mora, but could an Elder Scrolls Online story still capture me the way earlier chapters had? The answer is yes. Completely and unequivocally yes. Necrom is, without a doubt, the best chapter that ZeniMax have put out so far. And look, don't get me wrong, it's still an MMO story and it doesn't come close to the Final Fantasy flavoured Golden Child in the room, but it does deliver on every promise it makes. The return to Apocrypha and Hermaeus Mora was everything that a returning fan could ask for. At least one who enjoys MMOs. Plus, crucially, the new Arcanist class is an absolute breath of fresh air. I mean, it's absurdly overpowered, which helps, but I've yet to grow tired of melting swathes of enemies before me with my Eldritch Book Laser. Plus, my original main was a Dark Elf Sorcerer, but when I moved to Xbox, I made an Orc Dragon Knight. I liked the change from Dunmer Wizard to Awesomer Axe Cleaver well enough, but I missed the Dark Elf Sorcerer fantasy, and was dreadfully bored with the prospect of leveling that class twice, so this solves that issue too. I've still yet to do the side quests of a new zone, and I'm not max level on my Arcanist yet, but I can tell you right now that Necrom achieves everything you want a new MMO expansion to achieve. It gives you a fresh dose of some of your favourite hours playing the game. Assassin's Creed the Ezio Collection. This trilogy is comfort food. I'm well versed in it. It's the equivalent of that movie you rewatch at least once a year. But I've yet to play it on Xbox. I really don't have much to say about these games that I haven't already, besides the fact that they still hold up. I mean, the remaster didn't do much to those clay mold faces, and the AI can still be quirky. The gameplay starts out quaint and becomes frustrating the longer I spend with it, as usual. Because, as always, the goal is to refresh my memory before I play Assassin's Creed's free through Syndicate to fill in that big gap I've never played. And I'm gonna do it! This time for sure! Please pay no attention to the fact that I've not yet finished Revelations and not launched it in a week. This time for sure! Watch Dogs Legion. When we talk about underrated games, or at least when I talk about underrated games, the focus tends to be on one glaring flaw that I'm convinced isn't so bad. Like the tortured pacing of the unnecessarily sprawling open-world Assassin's Creed games, or the lack of content during WoW Warlords of Draenor, which I filled with a newcomer's experiences. With Watch Dogs Legion, though, we're looking at a different beast. I'm out here exploring dystopian London in a GTA-style open world which has been legitimately innovated on with the hacking mechanics. And then I look at the general reception this game received and it does not add up to me. I mean, environmental design alone is something which I think gets overlooked for gameplay these days. If you own or have access to Legion, boot it up and just wander around. Yes, it's a video game, so you'll hear the same phone conversation a few times over if you listen for it, but the level of detail in object clutter and general realism. It's impressive, and it's a victim of its own success. Perhaps due to the way games are designed, people don't often stop to smell the roses of an open world these days. Or, you know, the piss fumes. It is London, after all. Anyway, maybe it's just due to the fact that I've not played the previous 2 titles in the series, but the overall gameplay has left a properly solid impression on me. As mentioned, think GTA but with hacker fantasy magic powers which you can upgrade as you go. I love jumping through security cameras to scout out restricted areas and set up traps and so on. You have just enough remote power to give yourself an edge without it stepping on the toes of more traditional third-person action gameplay. And that's another thing, it's far more stealth-driven than GTA. And the stakes are higher too. Get shot down by the fascist private police state, and that character's on ice for 30 real-time minutes while you send someone else in. You'd think that would be annoying, but it's actually quite a perfect balance of risk and punishment. The story, in my opinion, is fairly solid. Characters are written to be generally believable. There's lots of swearing, and I wonder if some might find it inauthentic due to how prolific it is, but as a Brit, I'm happy to tell you that I've never heard a game sound so local. The randomly generated characters you recruit do a much better job at making you forget they're not handcrafted than I thought they would too. I've grown genuinely attached to some of my DedSec squad. They're more than just voice lines, they take centre stage in story cinematics, and talk to each other like they were written for it. This game is a genuine triumph, and it upsets me that people write it off so easily. It's one of my favourite games that I've played so far this year. The Crew 2. Here's another underrated Ubisoft game. I owned it and perfected it on a PS4 back in 2020, and every time I've seen it hit deep discount on the Xbox store, I've been sorely tempted. Well, guess who finally bit? And as someone with more Forza Horizon experience under my belt than the last time I played, I'm here to tell you that... No, don't worry, it's not as good. I'm not insane. But I'm generous enough to say that it scratches the same itch, to the point where PlayStation owners aren't missing out on a fantastic open-world racing experience thanks to this game. It has enough to make it stand out too, though you could argue that they seem to be throwing this away for Motorfest. The entirety of the United States, mainland USA I guess, remains a remarkable feat for an open world, and whilst it definitely ends up being sparse in areas as a result, there's a reason why I was a little disappointed to hear the sequel tackle a sane amount of drivable land. The other unique thing it has going for it is the ability to transform into a plane or a boat. The planes are legitimately fun to fly around in. I'm talking lose half an hour to turning your brain off and flying upside down through LA while you think about absolutely nothing levels of fun. And the boats are fine. They're a different style of racing, but I won't miss them so much. The things it leeches from Forza Horizon it does pretty well too. Obviously it can't hold a candle to Forza's physics engine or its customizability, but it has a solid roster of cars across a variety of racing disciplines. It also has its own version of ForzaFon called the Live Summit, where every week you'll be completing a bunch of events to earn weekly prizes such as exclusive cars. The twist here is that it's a leaderboard-based system, so only the top 3,000 or so players can qualify for the top prize. Depending on who you are, that'll be either enticing or intimidating. I'm still on the fence about it personally, but I think it's neat. So yeah, I'm glad Forza Horizon has some competition in The Crew. I'm hoping Motorfest is a strong sequel. Ultimately, The Crew 2 reminds me of my favourite open-world racing games from the PS2 era, and if you know me, you know that anything that ends with "it reminds me of the PS2 era" is a thumbs up. Story of Seasons, Friends of Mineral Town. I've only known the residents of Mineral Town for 2 days, and if anything happened to them, I'd kill everyone in this room and then myself. No, seriously, I'm way too early game to give any detailed account of my time in this game, but I just moved into Mineral Town and so far I'm having an exceptional time. There are so many cute guys and gals to romance, adorable cows, and, you know, standard farm game fare. Mineral Town does not reinvent the genre, partially because it helped invent the genre originally. But I've only really played Stardew, so I've got plenty of farming left in me. Minecraft. Good old Minecraft. The game's as fun as the people you play it with. I've recently joined a new community server and I've been having a blast. Well, at least until I discovered wardens for the first time. Then I nearly had a heart attack. Was Minecraft always this terrifying? Others. Actually, no. We're not doing this segment anymore. You don't need to hear about the scraps of odd hours I've spent playing Fortnite or some Game Pass game I spent 20 seconds in. I am a chronic archivist, but the world can live without this knowledge, I think. Right? But you know what the world can't live without knowledge of? These damn bloopers. If I have to suffer through my stupid attempts at speaking English words, you have to listen to them. Whoop. And look, don't get me wrong, it's still an MMO story and it doesn't touch the Final Fantasy flavoured golden child in the room, but it does deliver on every promise. Wait, oh my god, that sounds so dirty. Whoop. Genuinely attached. Genuinely. Whoop. And, as someone with more fucking lose half an hour to something. Whoop. It leeches from Forza Horizon, it does pretty shit. Whoop. Obviously it can't fucking read the sentence that you're reading. Whoop. It also has its own version of ForzaFon called the Live Summit, where every week you'll be you'll be doing something. You'll be competing and you'll be completing. Whoop. So yeah, I'm glad Forza Horizon shit. Whoop. Whoop.